Welcome back to Motorsport and Scale. This is episode 5 of the Model Factory Hiro Porsche 917K build. Today's episode we are going to be working on step 13, which is going to be just this one rear section here. Not a lot of parts to it, but it's going to be a little bit involved because there's a whole lot of plumbing that needs to be worked out. So that's what we're just going to concentrate on today. It'll be building up the oil tank, the fuel swirl pots, a fuel pump, fuel filter, and then getting all that installed and plumbed up. So that is going to be the episode. A little bit of soldering, there'll be some polishing, white metal work and so forth. Just to give you an idea, here's all the parts. They've been cleaned, of course, but I still need to clean everything up, get them soldered together, and probably going to polish these. These were typically polished on the real car, so that's more than likely what I'm going to do with these. So anyways, I'm going to get started on cleaning this up, and I'll check back in with you a little bit later. Alright, so I got all the parts cleaned up. I polished the two tanks. And I just ran them in my tumbler here to just put a bit of patina back on them. I didn't want them to be totally shiny. I just wanted to make them look like they were polished at one point, or you know, just the original sort of polished sheet aluminum that then gets formed and worked on. Loses a little bit of its luster, but still maintains it a bit. So that's what I was kind of going for there, not a full-on polish. Yeah, so you know, sometimes depending on how much work I did on the parts, I will run them through the tumbler again, because it does get rid of some of the tool marks that you might have left. So anyways, this is probably the worst part of the doing stuff in the tumbler is finding all the parts and getting them out of here. It can be a bit of a chore, to say the least. You know, it's always handy if you count how many parts you put in so that you know how many to look for, because they kind of hide. That's good. I tend to always leave water in here because the pins stick. So it's good to have something to wash them out. Sort of rinse it. They usually fall off. But yeah, you just kind of have to comb through the pile. I don't know any better way of doing this. I think some guys dump it all out onto a paper towel, the pins and everything, but I find that more of a pain because then you got to deal with all the pins. You end up getting these pins everywhere, and they're tiny. So they can be a bit of a hazard. So I don't want to be dropping them on the floor or anything. I think that's it for the parts. I don't think there was anything else. They tend to, the little ones hide in amongst the pins, so you kind of have to, oh, see, there's another one. I think that's it. There's another one. I think that's it. The other thing, these are plastic tweezers. The pins get magnetized, so if you use something steel or whatever, like normal tweezers, even though most of them would say they're stainless, they usually have some iron content in them because they are magnetic. Then you get all the pins sticking to your tweezers and it sucks. So anyways, that's everything cleaned up. I got all the fittings cleaned up, so next up we'll be painting and assembling. See you. All right, just a quick check-in. Show you where I've gotten on everything. As you can see, I've got a few things test fit right now, just test fitting the rear inner fenders, whatever you want to call them, wheel liners, wheel well liners, whatever. Just got them test fitted to ensure that it all still works with the tank in place, which it does. So yeah, you can see I've got the two tanks in. This is the oil tank. This is the fuel swirl pot collection tank, transfer tank, whatever you want to call it. So remember earlier I was going to polish those and leave a bit of a semi-polished finish on them. I decided I didn't like that and I ended up painting them. There was tons of pits and the castings weren't that great actually, so when I polished them it looked like ass. So I ended up painting them. I'll just hold that. Hopefully you can see. Sorry, this thing's rather awkward at the moment. You can also see I joined the front and rear sections together, which I ended up having to do just so that I can work on all the pipe work. So yeah, I think you can see there I've got oil tank is all plumbed in, all the high pressure fuel lines are on. So now I'm just working on the supply fuel line that goes to this tank. It comes from these two pumps here. These are lift pumps which lift the fuel out of the tank. And I'm pretty sure on this setup these two are low pressure pumps, and then this one over here is a high pressure pump which supplies the fuel injection pump, which steps it up even higher, the pressure. So anyways, yeah, so that's where I'm at. That's what I'm working on right now. I'm just building the hoses that are gonna go from there over to the two pumps. So you come into a Y, come over to this model Factory Hiro. I don't know if we can, I don't know, was guessing, I think, on a lot of the stuff they have in their diagrams here, like, you know, their instructions for their piping here is just stuff it all in behind the engine or in front of the engine, which, you know, really you don't see that shit anyways. It's pretty much impossible, but they don't really tell you where any of these hoses go. There's parts missing for the oil tank as well. Like the way this thing's supposed to work is, all right, this is an oil tank, 27 liters. So at the bottom of the tank is the supply to the engine. That goes to the pump, which sits on the front of the engine. It's a dry sump system. And then there's a couple scavenge pumps on the bottom of the heads, which go in through there. None of that plumbing is there. None of the provisions for fittings or anything is on the engine, on the oil pump. So anyways, the supply line comes from the tank, goes to the oil pump, goes through the engine, circulates, comes back out. And what it's supposed to do is go to a thermostatic diverter valve, which is it looks like a pipe with 3 fittings on it. So what happens, it comes out of the engine, goes into that thing. It's got a thermostatically controlled valve in it. So if the oil's cold, it will just dump it into the tank. If the oil's hot, then it diverts it up to the oil cooler, and then it returns and dumps into the tank. That's why we have 2 oil returns on the top of the tank. One's for if we're bypassing the cooler, and one's from the cooler itself. So you can't really see it. It's kind of hard to see, but I just sort of made a rough rendition of what that diverter valve, thermostatically controlled diverter valve, looks like. It's not a true representation. Barely see it down there. It usually sits down in, sorry, my hand's totally in the way. It sits down in between the tank and the frame. I've got it. I'm just pointing to it right here. I don't know if we can actually see what I've done. You can kind of see where the one That's one hose coming off of it. That would be if it was being diverted directly into the tank. And then at the bottom there's the other two lines, that one from the engine that would then divert to the oil cooler, and then the return. So anyways, I got all that plumbed up. And same with the front of the engine. I don't know if I probably showed that a little bit in some of my photos in one of the earlier episodes. That it just, you'll never see them. You can see them there right now. Let's see if we can get that to focus a little bit better. So I made all the lines, the scavenge lines from the heads. I did those. I did the feed and return line from the pump itself. So it's all there. Never see it again. So I don't blame them for not really doing any of that. The diverter valve, I just don't think he knew exactly how it worked. It's hard to find good pictures of that valve. So he just has just stuff all the wires in there. Like there's no attempt was made on the part of Hiro to figure out where all the oil lines went. And the fuel lines, he's kind of got them mostly right. So again, the way these work, like I say, that tank is it's a transfer tank. The main tank's on the other side. So it's like a staging tank. So the fuel comes out of the main tanks into this tank, comes in at the top. Inside of this thing is like a helix that the fuel flows through, so that will de-aerate the fuel and get it ready for the high pressure pump. So it feeds from the bottom, goes from there, goes up and around to a filter. There's a high pressure filter right here. Out of that into the fuel injection pump. So, and again, here it doesn't give you any fitting for here. It should be a banjo fitting up on the pump and the injection pump, but he gives you nothing for that. So quite a bit of omissions on this one, I find. And then again, that's what I'm working on now. Out of the injection pump, there's a return line, because you always feed more fuel into the injection pump than what you can use, because you don't want to starve it. They stop working if you do that. So the high pressure supply is always at a higher volume than maximum demand, so you need a high pressure return. So that's what I'm going to be working on. There'll be a high pressure return from the other side of the pump, and it goes down and back into the fuel tank here. And then the pickup for the lift pumps are these two. They'll go to the intake. Then these other two will come to a Y, which will come to the supply that comes into the top of this tank. Then there's also another two breather lines that go from this top piece over to the filler neck, and that's just an air bleed to get rid of any air. And then there's another air line, an air bleed that goes from the tank up to the highest spot. So those are your breathers. So that's what I got to build. Anyways, that was probably way too much information. I'm sure that you didn't need to know that. So right now I am working on some of my high pressure lines. These are the silver ones. So what I'm using is silver braided line from Top Studio. This is the 1.5 mil stuff. It looks good, this stuff. It's fabric, so it's a pain in the ass because it unravels quite easily. So what I do is, this is a piece of 0.6 mil lead solder. So I feed that through. But then you need to in this case, all these lines have crimped ferrules on them. These are not AN fittings. They're not going to be red and blue, like everybody seems to paint every goddamn fitting you see on a model. Like, that's the only type of fitting ever used on a race car. It's not. These are either Goodrich or Goodyear. They might have been Airquick. Crimped, like fabricated hoses, permanent hoses that have crimped ferrules on them. So, and then at least Hiro gives you the right, like the fittings are correct. The only thing he doesn't give you is, he gives you the right fittings. They look fairly accurate for the type of fittings there actually are. But what you need to come up with on your own is a ferrule for the line. That doesn't matter if you're using the black lines or the braided line. So what I've come up with, I've used brass tubing in the past, but I find it really difficult to feed. Well, to find the exact right size is thin enough. I've tried drilling some out to make it thinner, but it's very arduous task. So what I'm using for the ferrules, and you can just go back to this to see some built-up examples. I think they look pretty good. What I'm using here is this stuff. So this is a Hasegawa tri-tool film. Sorry, that's not going to focus very well. It's like a mylar film. It's quite stretchy. It's quite thin. This is the gold, and it's dull. They make a shiny gold one as well. This is the dull one, so I think it captures a look of, these were cadmium plated, or yellow zinc plated, or yellow cadmium plated fittings and everything. So they got a goldish tint to them. And it's interesting, I painted the fittings with titanium gold from Tamiya, LP something. And it gives a bit of quite a pale gold, which looks like yellow cadmium plating. Pretty good representation of it. But then if you look at the real fittings, I got some really good reference pictures. The plating that's on the ferrules almost looks like brass. They almost look like brass, very gold brass color. So although this might look like I didn't match my colors very well, and it's actually what my reference pictures kind of indicate is what they look like. So anyways, I'm going to end it there because I got to figure out my camera. I was going to show you building my process here. But anyway, I guess I'll just carry on. I don't know if I can get this or not. I'll give it a shot. If it doesn't turn out, you won't see any of this. But anyways, what I do, essentially, because the braided line is fabric, it frays at the end really easy, so you have to do something to keep it from unfraying. And we need a ferrule on the end of this hose anyways. So, oh my god, this fucking camera. Yeah, you're not going to be able to see that at all. I need to get this out of the way. Yeah, so what I've figured out is, what I've done on this, I've used heat shrink tubing for this as well, and then just painted the heat shrink tubing, which is alright. It's a little thick though. This stuff's super thin, so it looks like, I think it ends up looking like a crimped ferrule, which are quite thin in real life. So, I wrap it around a couple wraps. I cut enough that I have a couple wraps. because it doesn't stick to the braided line very well, but it sticks to itself really well. And then just usually roll it. What that basically does, if you ever worked with wire rope, it seizes the cable, right? It'll prevent it from unraveling. So then I just got that wrapped, and I'll trim it flush with where I've wrapped it, and that's it. That's that. So then I usually just poke the solder down a bit, so I have some room. Oops, bent it. Sometimes when this is quite a long piece, so it's kind of difficult to move the solder. So the other trick is just you can pull it down, expose a chunk of solder, trim the solder, and then pull it back up, because I want it to be hollow so that I can install my fitting. And I usually use an instant set adhesive. I guess you have to, this is slightly bigger than the solder I use, so it takes a bit to get it in there. There we go. A fairly convincing, hose end installed on there. So, next step will be to figure out how long this needs to be, and then what I do next is I'll figure out how long it needs to be. I'll mark that. I'll put, wrap the gold tape around here, and then trim at the area. I find that works best for making these. And doing the vinyl tube, I do the same process with the gold tape or silver, depending on what I'm trying to represent. But just on the vinyl tube that they provided, so it's a lot easier actually. So yeah, that's just a quick update on what I'm doing. How I make these. I think they look pretty decent. Fair representation of. All right, so there we go. We got done up to the end of step 14 technically. So we set out at the beginning of this episode to get mainly this side done, get all the plumbing done and so forth. So yeah, we've accomplished all that. We've got all that done in here, all the wiring, or not wiring, all the fluid hoses complete and installed. I also went ahead and did the same on the other side. I'll just spin this around so it's closer to you and closer to me, I guess. So yeah, this side's all done. Right now, this is just mocked up, as you can see, with the blue tack in here and so forth. So that was just so I could build the lines out. So I got all the breather lines that go across and go down to the tank. These are the, all the high pressure lines are done with the silver braided line. The suction pipes are done with these black rubber lines. and then obviously represent different hose clamps for those versus the crimp connections for the high pressure lines. Anyway, so I'm trying to be technically accurate as possible. More than likely back in the day, they didn't use silver, steel braided lines. They were probably like nylon woven black, high pressure black rubber lines. But I don't know, for visual interest, I think that this works quite well. So anyways, got all that done. These are just loosely installed. As you can see, you can just undo those. These are just sitting there. Everything's mocked up. So next step, now that that's all done, as you can see, I've got a bit of a start on it. We're at the point where we need to get some paint on this thing. So I've got it all mocked up. I've got the side pods on. That's the actual next step in the instructions, is to get the side pods permanently mounted on the vehicle. So obviously, in order to do that, they need to be painted. In order to paint them, I really should be painting everything at the same time, and deckling and everything. And I could get away with just painting these right now just to get them on, but I like to paint everything at the same time. That way the tone matches across the board. Like sometimes there's a risk if you paint a panel that butts up against another one at different times, the color won't match exactly. This thing's all white, so there is that chance, but it's not quite as risky as, let's say, blue or red or some other darker color would be more noticeable with a bit of variation. So anyways, that's the next step, is going to be getting onto finalizing the bodywork and getting some paint on everything. So yeah, that's what we'll do in the next episode. So for right now, that's a wrap on this section and this episode. So just thanks for watching, and I hope you liked it. Feel free to leave your comments below. I'd definitely like to know if you're enjoying this, what I'm doing, and the format or whatever, and always open for suggestions. So yeah, anyways, so these get pushed down, just pull them up a bit. Otherwise they look a little flat. Anyways, we will see you in the next episode. I'm going to stop saying what episode number it is, because I think I'm going to have to break these up into shorter episodes because I waffle on so much. So again, thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time. Take care. Bye-bye.